Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is James and welcome back to Soundline. Today's video I'm going to be talking to you about Nordost's new Leif3 series of cables that they've brought out. This replaces the previous series of Leif cables in the power, analog interconnect and speaker cable ranges. Initially I'm going to talk about the power cable improvements that they've made and the sound improvements that we get when we listen to them, and then Ben is going to talk about the speaker cables because I wasn't here when the new speaker cables were in for us to listen to, but Ben got a chance to. So I'll introduce him and he can have a chat to you quickly about what he heard when you listened to the new speaker cables. Changes that they've made to the cables, the most fundamental changes that we can see that they've made is they have increased the gauge of the conductors inside all of their power cables. So the Purple Flare has gone from 3 18 gauge cores up to 316, the Blue Heaven from 316 up to 314, and the Red Dawn has gone from 314s up to 312 gauge cores. So all of them have essentially gotten thicker, kind of shifted one stage up, if that makes sense. So now, theoretically, the new Blue Heaven actually has the same number of strands and the same gauge of wires what the old Red Dawn has. So that's made for some interesting testing for us. As far as things like capacitance, as far as I can see, that sort of thing hasn't changed, but because the cores are now thicker, it does mean that each cable now has a lower DC resistance over the length of the cable, which will help with, current transmission. From a physical aspect of it, I've got a couple of the old ones here which I can physically compare them to. So across the new range, all of the new Leif3 series have got these kind of plastic, I don't know, I'm going to call them anklets type thing. They're not a ferrite magnet as far as I can tell. They're like too thin to be a ferrite magnet, but they are just these nice little plastic things which are bound to all of the cables, which now have the serial number, product name and branding on it, whereas before on the old ones they had it on the heat shrink. I think this is a much nicer look, much cleaner. The previous ones had like 2 layers of heat shrink with the printing on it, and over time it would wear off and that sort of thing. This looks much more professional, much more premium, having the branding actually printed on these plastic anklets. And the heads have changed as well. They're now these glossy heads. I don't know. I don't know if internally they're much different. I just know that I like the glossier ones better. I think they look much nicer and much more premium. And then obviously when you hold the 2 Blue Heavens side by side, don't know if you can see this on camera, but the old one, this is the old one here on the right, and this is the new one. You can actually physically see the difference in thickness between the two of these, so they have gotten substantially beefier in their construction. And that kind of goes across the range as well. Like I say, the new speaker cables and new analog interconnects also have these couplers, and it has made the construction overall across the range look a lot more solid and durable. The old speaker cables, where the positive and negative separated, they kind of just came to this end, and it looked kind of like if you wanted to, you could completely peel them apart. Whereas now the new speaker cables have got that coupler to kind of act as the point where it divides, and it just looks a lot nicer. The most important thing, sound. I've had a good listen to these cables. They've been running in for about a week or so now, so they're not fully run in yet. I can still hear a little bit of glare on them, which will actually, I'm sure that the glare will go away as they get running even more, because that always happens with cables. But already these cables are far and away outperforming the old ones. We did a couple of tests just now where we listened to our system with a Red Dawn feeding the QB8 and a couple of Blue Heavens coming off of it, going to our amplifier and CD player. First thing we did was replace the Red Dawn feed cable with the new Red Dawn feed cable, and immediately the first thing we notice is the noise floor just completely drops away and the whole soundstage becomes a lot blacker. So you start to notice these really fine micro details floating in the air. It's the track we listened to, Bob Dylan's Man in Long Black Coat, starts really quiet, and when you compare the old Red Dawn to the new one on the system, it's like night and day. It's literally like the old one has floor noise you didn't realize was there, and then you plug this guy in and it's just gone. It's like dead silent. Whenever you improve the noise floor of a system, it seems to elevate everything else about it. So by reducing the amount of noise, you're now able to hear those finer details. You're able to hear layering of elements much clearer. The sound floats up off the ground and becomes more holographic. So it's an all-over slam dunk improvement. The second test that we did was then we replaced the two Blue Heaven power cables going to the amp and the CD player with a couple of new Blue Heaven ones. And the change I didn't think was as substantial as when we did it to the Red Dawn feeding the system. But one thing I definitely noticed was the bass extension improved dramatically. And I think that comes as a result of now the cables that are going to the amp and CD player, particularly the amp, being thicker and heavy duty. So when you have the thicker cable feeding the amplifier, that usually just opens it up to pull a bit more current when it needs to and lower the bass extension, or improve the bass extension and give it a bit more just grunt and strength behind its output. It's kind of interesting now because we, when selling these products, would always used to say, okay, you know, you're buying a QB8, you need a cable to feed the QB8 and you need a cable for your amplifier at least. That's kind of the bare minimum. You should probably start with Red Dawn. This is where we've always directed our customers to. A, for the reason that Red Dawn was the only cable that you could get a 16 amp connector in, and we're big fans of using the heavy duty connectors because they're really solid and allow a bit more current to flow through when you need it. Now that the Blue Heaven is as thick as the Red Dawn used to be, and now also comes in a 16 amp connector, that's something I haven't mentioned yet, now we can actually specify systems to start entirely with Blue Heaven. So you can use a Blue Heaven feed cable and a Blue Heaven power cable on your amplifier and not be worried that you have undergauged the cable going to the power hungry aspects of your system. So this is going to change the way that we specify our systems quite a bit, and potentially, given that Blue Heaven is still a really nice affordable product, it's going to open these cables up to many more potential clients. So we're really happy about this. Going back to what I actually just touched on but had forgotten to mention already, the Blue Heaven now comes in that 16 amp connector option, which is great. The Purple Flare also now comes in a 10 amp IEC 13 connector, whereas before it was only figure 8. Now they will do figure 8 and the standard 10 amp IEC connector. So that means you can now specify the Purple Flare to power little CD players that have a 10 amp IEC connector, or anything else that you don't need as much current for. Overall, really impressive cables, big improvement. I love the fact that now we can use entirely Blue Heavens for a system if we want. That opens us up to more customers. It's a big improvement in sound quality. The Red Dawn is now a really beefy cable, so that's going to allow us to specify that for some very power hungry amplifiers and subwoofers and that sort of thing. And I really love the new construction, the new plastic anklet things with the engraving permanently on there, the nice glossy heads. Overall, 10 out of 10. I'm really happy with them. So I've done all this with the power cables. That's what I've had the most opportunity to play with and look at and experience. As I said before, Ben had an opportunity to listen to the difference between the old and the new Red Dawn speaker cable before it quickly got wished off back away to a hi-fi show somewhere where it's now currently in use. So I'm going to quickly hand off to him to talk about the differences he heard between the new and the old speaker cable.
Thank you, James. Yeah, I did get to listen to both the newest generation and the last generation of the Red Dawn speaker cables. What I noticed was immediately more presence from the latest generation, better kind of black background, lower noise floor. Pretty much what we've been saying across the whole new generation applies to the speaker cables as well. I noticed more presence, a little bit more drive. It just felt like it really unleashed a little bit of power, which is probably due to, again, just having a blacker background for the sound. But it was really impressive to hear just that jump up that they've made with these new generation cables.
All right, cool. So that's it, guys. I know we didn't get to talk about the analog interconnects in this video. We're still waiting on our analog interconnects to come in. We have ordered some, but we just, we got to wait our turn for stock to become available for us to play with them. Yeah, I hope this video has been informative or you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions about the product, let us know in the comments, or let us know what you think of the look of them, the new style, and I'll catch you in the next video. Ka kite anō.